4 college students, 4 young lives full of promise, 4 futures erased in minutes by a man who smiled for a selfie just hours after their brutal murders. Brian Kohberger, the criminology PhD student charged with the savage killings of 4 University of Idaho students, took this chilling selfie on the morning of November 13th, 2022, giving a thumbs up to the camera right after he butchered Kaylee Conclave's Madison Mogan, Xana Kernudel, and Ethan Chapin in their sleep. But the selfie is just one haunting piece of evidence emerging as Kohberger's summer trial approaches. The prosecution case grows stronger by the day. What dark impulse drives a criminology PhD student, someone who's studied killers, to allegedly become one himself? The answer may be more disturbing than anyone imagined. This is the sickening case with all the creepy updates of the Idaho student murders. The image is haunting in its normalcy. Brian Kohberger, dressed in a button-up shirt, wireless earbuds in his ears, looking directly into the camera. Maybe a little too American Psycho. But hey, it could be anyone's casual morning selfie, except for the timing. At 10:31 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, as this photo was taken, the bodies of 4 murdered students lay undiscovered in their off-campus home. Blood still dripped down the walls of the residence. First responders wouldn't arrive for another hour and a half. Now, Kohberger's defense attorneys write in recent court filings, if evidence of bushy eyebrows is presented to the jury might well believe that Mr. Kohberger is guilty simply because of bushy eyebrows. They're talking about the only surviving eyewitness's description.
Prosecutors say a surviving housemate described seeing a man with bushy eyebrows inside the home the night of the murders, and the jury will need to decide if Kohberger matches that description.
The prosecutors argue that it provides crucial evidence. Dylan Morteson's account can close this case. But while Kohberger's defense is fighting about his eyebrows, his selfie is going viral. The image's mundane appearance is what makes it so creepy. Just a smile and a thumbs up. Criminologist Dr. Debbie Goodman, speaking to Court TV, described the selfie as a slam dunk for prosecutors.
My thoughts, Julie, slam dunk, and here's why. If we were to open any college or university textbook on serial and mass murderers, this is absolutely one of these checkpoints and check marks of what these individuals do.
This isn't the first case where a killer documented themselves after committing the worst thing imaginable. Ted Bundy, when asked why he photographed his victims, reportedly said, "When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it."
This photo is so eerie and chilling, yet very indicative of this individual wanting to remember what he did.
The selfie's discovery adds another layer to the mountain of evidence prosecutors have assembled against Kohberger. Evidence that will be fiercely contested in a series of pretrial hearings throughout April that could determine which piece makes it to the jury this summer. 4 friends, 4 futures erased in a single night. Madison and Kaylee, 21, were those ride-or-die best friends everyone envies. The kind who finished each other's sentences and had a million inside jokes. Graduation was just around the corner.
They shared everything. They came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together. And in the end, they died together.
Xana, 20, and her boyfriend Ethan, also 20, were still in that magical early relationship phase. The butterflies, the late night talks, the feeling that something beautiful was just beginning. What happened in that house still haunts everyone who worked the scene. The 4 were stabbed repeatedly in their beds. Some had defensive wounds, and they woke up and fought for their lives. Blood everywhere, on walls, on floors. Days later, it was still dripping down the walls. The house is gone now, demolished. Too much pain lived in those walls.
We can't sit here and say, oh, if there was 5 victims or 6 victims or 7 victims, then you go for the death penalty? No, it's been crossed. The line's been crossed. And we're gonna go there.
They weren't just victims. They were someone's everything. Someone's reason to call home every Sunday. Someone's future wedding day. Someone's unwritten story. The evidence against Kohlberger is stacking up, piece by devastating piece. Prosecutors are fighting to tell the full story. The Amazon receipts don't lie. Kohlberger bought a Ka-Bar military knife, complete with sheath and sharpener, 8 months before the killings. And even more chilling, after the murders, he searched for that exact knife again online, like revisiting the scene of the crime, but from the safety of his laptop. His defense team is scrambling. They're calling it a coincidence, algorithm suggestions, anything but what it looks like.
But still, this is coming in, and it's going to be damaging evidence for him.
Then there's his hidden digital shadow. Cell pings placing his phone near their home at least 12 times before that night. Security cameras caught his white Hyundai circling the neighborhood repeatedly. The DNA tells its own damning story. Male DNA on the knife's sheath button snap, a perfect match to samples taken from Kohlberger's family trash. But perhaps the most haunting evidence comes from the young woman who saw him and lived. Dylan Mortensen, terrified in her own hallway at 4 a.m., face to face with a figure clad in black, wearing a mask. Those bushy eyebrows, she can't forget. The defense wants those eyebrows erased from the record. Too prejudicial, they argue. Too identifying. Each piece of evidence is a voice for 4 people who can no longer speak for themselves. The legal battle over what jurors will hear has never been more crucial. Speaking of Dylan, she's the only living witness who saw the killer. The only one who can tell us what really happened that night. Let's piece together the final hours before everything shattered. Just a normal Saturday night in college, Santa and Ethan hit up a frat party. Madison and Kaylee bar hopped, and then grabbed late night carbonara from a food truck. By 2 a.m., they were all home, safe on King Road. Or so they thought. The 3-story house held 6 people that night. Madison and Kaylee took the top floor, Santa, Ethan, and Dylan occupied the middle, and Bethany slept alone downstairs. Around 4 a.m., Dylan jolted awake to strange sounds. Then she heard what she thought sounded like Kaylee's voice. "There's someone here." Then came crying from Xana's room, and a man's voice. When she looked again, there he was. A figure in black. Masked. By 4:20, Dylan was desperately trying to reach her friends. "No one is answering. I'm freaking out," she texted Bethany. "Yeah, dude, WTF," Bethany wrote back. "Like he had something over his forehead and mouth," Dylan typed with shaking fingers. "I'm not kidding. I am so freaked out." Then comes the 8-hour gap that haunts this case. They didn't call 911 until nearly noon. Instead, phone records show social media scrolling, family calls, and even photos taken. When police finally arrived, they faced a scene that broke even hardened officers. 4 young lives, multiple stab wounds each, blood everywhere. This timeline, pieced together from texts, cameras, and Dylan's terrified memory, now forms the heart of the case against Kohlberger. A case where eyebrows seen above a mask might be the detail that sends someone to death row. The man who studied killers became one. That's the twisted reality at the core of this nightmare. Bryan Kohlberger wasn't just fascinated by crime, he made it his life's work, his academic career, his future, all built on understanding the criminal mind. Now he sits behind bars, accused of becoming exactly what he studied. Born in Pennsylvania in 1994, Kohlberger climbed the academic ladder of criminal psychology with disturbing precision. Then a criminology PhD at Washington State University, a mere 10-minute drive from the house where the 4 friends would take their final breaths. His college paper haunts us now. In one assignment titled Crime Scene Scenario Final, he methodically described how to document crime scenes, how to look for evidence. On Reddit, he reached out to former criminals. "I am inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime, with emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience." Was he gathering research or rehearsing? The The warning signs flickered at the edges. A brewery owner reported Kohberger making creepy comments to female staff, growing angry when women wouldn't engage with him, and female students noticed how differently he treated them compared to male students. It's hard to imagine that no one saw a red flag when it came to Brian. However, who really imagines someone can commit such an atrocious murder?
You never expect someone to do that, and I think it would be, not truthful to say like, oh yeah, I definitely saw it coming, but like really thinking about it, it's not that surprising.
Where is the line between studying monsters and becoming one? Between academic curiosity and deadly obsession? 2 young women live with this question every day. Dylan and Bethany, the roommates who survived. While their friends were murdered in their beds, they somehow walked away alive. Now they carry the weight of what they saw, what they heard, and what they did in the hours that followed. And while they're still struggling to sleep at night and accept what happened, Kohberger's defense is pointing fingers at them, saying they are suspicious for not calling 911 sooner.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she not wake me up.
This call and all that followed were made 8 hours after their friends were butchered. But trauma defies our expectations. It shatters logical timelines. Science tells us there is no right way to survive horror, and people might not behave rationally in those moments. There's also another layer to this. Dr. Kaufman says women are typically just socialized to downplay fear. They're often seen as overly dramatic or reactive. And so, if they were discussing the situation together, they might have reinforced each other's doubts instead of escalating to call 911. And as the trial approaches, these 2 young women face impossible scrutiny. Not only must they relive the night that they lost their friends, they must also defend their own reactions under the harsh glare of courtroom lights. 2 survivors carrying 4 ghosts, and now the weight of justice too.
The results of autopsies indicated that the 4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds, and there was no sign of sexual assault.
For 7 weeks, an entire college town held its breath. Parents called their children hourly, students traveled in packs. Moscow, Idaho, a place where nothing bad ever happened, suddenly felt like hunting grounds. Then came the trash. FBI agents, desperate for answers, sifted through the Kohberger's family garbage outside their Pennsylvania home during winter break. Male DNA on a knife sheath at the murder scene. A perfect match. The PhD student who studied killers was too. They took him on December 30th. He walked calmly to police cars while his parents watched in shock, their world collapsing. When asked to speak in court, Kohberger stood silent. A judge forced to enter a not guilty plea for him. Now the prosecution wants death by firing squad if necessary, Idaho's newly approved method of execution. But first comes the April hearings, where Judge Hippler will decide what evidence jurors can see and whether Kohberger's autism diagnosis might spare him from death row.
Brian Kohberger does live with autism. He's on the spectrum, and they don't want to show it to show that he didn't know right from wrong or anything at the time. They're saying he's innocent. They're going with an innocence defense.
The defense said, for example, he does not show emotion on his face. He has a flat effect. He sits very still and holds his hands in the same position. He has a piercing stare. He does not show expected reactions. The question is, does this have anything to do with being evil? The battle lines are drawn. Trial begins on August 11th, 3 months to determine if a student of murder becomes its ultimate case study. But it's not all about the evidence. One crucial element remains elusive: motive. The question haunts this case like a shadow. Why would a criminology PhD student allegedly kill 4 people he apparently had no personal connection to? Why these 4 students? Why that night? Why such savage violence? Investigators keep digging. At first, they thought Kohberger might have known his victims, but exhaustive searches revealed no prior connection, no classes together, no mutual friends, no interactions, except the digital ones. His deleted Instagram followed Madison, Kaylee, and Xana, a silent watcher from the shadows. According to reports, he messaged one of them repeatedly in the weeks before. She never answered. His white Elantra became a ghost car on their street. Surveillance caught it passing their home at least 12 times before that night, circling, watching, waiting. Was this rejection turned obsession? The rage of a man who couldn't handle being ignored? Some experts see classic stalking patterns, fixation escalating to violence when the fantasy relationship crumbled against reality's wall. Others see something more calculated. A criminology student crossing the invisible line from studying predators to becoming one. His Reddit post seeking criminals' thoughts and feelings now reads like recognizance, not academics.
Because one of the things that we can learn about language is when they use contempt, anger, disgust types of language, it will tell us the percentage of the possibility of him carrying out a deadly act.
Bottom line,
he came up at 95% a surety that he was going to commit a violent act.
Yet in court, he smiles, calm, collected.
It's not a genuine smile. When the mouth goes like this, it's like that. All that is of just making an affirmative acknowledgement, like, hi.
Bryan Kohberger will likely never tell us why. His attorneys will shield him from testifying, from exposing whatever darkness lives within him. The why may die with him. Prosecutors don't need why for a conviction. They just need to prove that he did it. But for everyone else, the families, the community, a watching world, the absence of why may be the cruelest cut of all. A college town erased its innocence in a single night. Moscow, Idaho, population 25,000, where tragedy wasn't supposed to happen, where parents sent their children with confidence. Then, blood painted the walls of 1122 King Road. A generation of young people learning overnight that safety is an illusion that bleeds when punctured. It's scary enough when you hear someone you know was unalived by someone they knew, but by a complete stranger? That means you could be next. Everyone feels this now. Students fled Moscow like refugees. Those who couldn't packed together in apartments meant for half their number, finding safety in proximity, in numbers, and in shared terror. Even now, with Kohberger behind bars, the trauma remains embedded in Moscow's soul. The house where 4 futures ended became a spectacle. Cars slowing to stare, phones raised to capture death's dwelling presence. Finally, mercifully, bulldozers came. The physical structure is gone, but the void remains. The trial approaches like a second wave of devastation. Media vans will line the streets. Satellite trucks will block views. Strangers will once again dissect this community's worst nightmare for ratings and clicks and views. Yet somehow light persists. 4 families shattered beyond repair still find strength to attend hearings, to speak their children's names, and to ensure that the world remembers lives, not just deaths. As April's evidence battles rage in courtrooms, both sides sharpen their weapons. The prosecution adds former U.S. Attorney Josh Hurritt, a federal heavyweight. The defense counters with Bicca Barlow, DNA evidence specialist. The judge's decisions now will shape everything that follows. Will jurors see the Amazon knife purchase? Will they hear about the bushy eyebrows Dylan couldn't forget? Will deleted Instagram follows and ignored messages paint a pattern of obsession? By summer's end, 12 strangers must decide if Kohberger lives or dies, if he'll face a firing squad, Idaho's newly approved method, or life contained in concrete and steel. For 3 months, surviving roommates will relive their nightmare on the witness stand. Will Kohberger speak? History suggests silence. As summer blooms, all eyes turn to Boise. 4 families wait for something called justice that can never truly exist. For what justice returns children to parents' arms? What verdict erases blood from memory? What sentence restores the future for those who lost everything in a night that never ended? A college town waits to reclaim its name from headlines. 4 families wait to exhale, and Moscow, Idaho stands at a crossroads of what it was and what it must now become. What is justice after something like this happens? And could Bryan Kohberger's actions have been prevented if people paid better attention to his words and posts? What do you think? Leave a comment down below. If this story moved you, like and subscribe, and come back for our next video. The truth needs to be shared. One day, it may save a life. See you soon, yeah? And stay safe.